Okay, being 4:30, we'll open up the January 22nd Sewer Commissioners meeting. Elaine, aye.
Bill Watson, I.
Ryan Donahoe, aye.
Is anybody online? Okay. You mentioned the commitment?
Yeah.
The 43 Shore Drive? Okay. Sounds like they got an estimated water sewer bill. And they, after doing actual reading, it was much less than the estimated, and they're looking for an adjustment. So, so,
Do they recommend an adjustment on here though?
yeah,
12,500 gallons?
yeah,
Well, that's an average per quarter.
yeah.
So
So,
we're at like 197 and every other quarter is 12.
yeah, she says it was estimated at 32,000 gallons. Oh, the 193. How about his bill was estimated at 32,000 gallons, which is much higher than his typical usage. Yeah, billed usage is 193. Oh, his usage in the middle, 32, 22, 23, 24, 12. Okay, so. How about I make a motion to adjust the estimated billing to the average over the last 4 quarters. That way you can figure out the math and all of them.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Just, well, with that, so that's 15, 16, 18, 14, so that's like around 16,000.
Probably,
Okay, just,
yeah.
But you can also see when you read these, wherever it says these were estimated, you know,
Right.
as they go along, they're estimated.
yeah, so I'm looking at 18, 14, 17. Actuals,
Right.
so I'm thinking
Yeah.
16 looks like the middle, just so that we have
So
it
they were averaging for,
around 16.
Yeah,
okay.
okay, so we'll do the average.
Okay.
Okay, how about update from the superintendent?
I'm trying to keep things brief. There hasn't been a whole lot of craziness relative to prior meetings. We got our damaged pump back from Marion Drive today,
Oh,
which is
good,
great.
good.
So, we got a message from people that rebuild the pump saying that there's probably a foreign object in there that destroyed the pump. So we had the pump station cleaned out. I sent you guys some pictures of it, the rocks and brick that was in there. So we get that cleaned out. The new pump will get installed next week. And we should be up and running 100%.
Is that a normal thing that you get that kind of debris in there? Whether there's any construction on any of
I
that
would say
pipeline?
on original, like new construction.
Yeah.
It's
There'd
likely
be
to
something,
happen.
maybe, yes.
Over time, if you had some of the risers on the manholes
Yeah.
fall apart.
Yeah.
A lot of times the salt from the roads will get in there, start
Probably.
deteriorating
Okay,
concrete.
okay.
You might get some bricks fall in that didn't get discovered and make their way down the line. So some of it's new construction. You can't always watch every minute what's going on. It could be that when they came in, put risers on new manholes, that some of the brickwork fell in and no one took the initiative.
You don't feel
Get
like
it
it's
out.
somebody popping the cover and dumping
No,
wheel full of stuff down.
no. I wouldn't say it's any sort of
Right.
deliberate action.
Right.
But at this point, it's cleaned out and ready to go for the pump. All our numbers continue to be good at the lab. We did get one reading, was a little higher than normal. Carl just asked for a retest on it and things came back down where they should be.
Oh, good.
So other than that, everything else is going great. Just
The
concentrate.
cold hasn't set in there as a problem.
We had no freezing issues this time. Right?
I mean, even the activity in the. Do you have any heaters? Do you have heaters? It's for the water? just to keep the temperature up in the,
Not in the tanks.
Yeah.
So just the heat from the blowers themselves, they'll keep it relatively warm. And then the influent coming in
Yeah.
is probably
I
60
didn't know, with this
degrees.
kind of cold, 9 degrees at night, 4 degrees at night, last night, that can start to become a problem. If the makeup air is coming from inside the building and it's warm, that'll do it.
Yeah, it takes outside air, pushes it through the blower, and I think the outgoing temperature is around 180 to 200 degrees blowing into the cold tank, so it somewhat
Yeah,
keeps it
all right.
relatively
So that's always a
warm
problem.
enough, I guess.
Depending, that system, it solves that problem. A lot of plants, this is where they start becoming a real problem. So bugs don't like it when it's,
Yeah, so we just
30 degrees.
increase our bug populations in the winter because they operate slow.
Yeah. we have to inoculate, a lot of plants, you have to inoculate them with the cryobacteria that like it being 50 or less. And the other ones go to sleep, the ones that are normal. And the cryobacteria think, oh, this is great. We're from the Arctic. We think this is wonderful.
Like
And
a
they kick
Canadian coming down here to swim. They think
All
all
at once, right?
Yes,
As opposed to New Orleans. It's like New Orleans.
right, right.
Imagine the bacteria down there, they don't know what to do.
Okay,
Chime in and just say,
okay.
we'll do it next time.
Yeah, after exact conversation, good.
I'm sorry. I missed that.
Are you all set?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just gonna quickly take Kathy.
Hi guys.
Hi. We don't have anything to share with you. It didn't make our agenda this time. Do you have anything to share with us?
I just want to say something. I know what you're trying to do is wonderful. I can't do it because of it's been the law, however you put it to me last time we met. But I just does it mean that you have to change the law if you're going to do a buyback?
Okay, right now we have a buyback program for vacant lots only.
Right.
So for us to consider something like this, because it's specific in our bylaws, our rules and regulations, only for vacant lots, we would have to change that to now say residential. And that's the piece we would need to discuss on whether or not we want to reduce the value of a residential property based on less EIUs.
Okay. So that bylaw change would have to be discussed and would it have to be brought before the Board of Selectmen? How does that work?
No, that it's strictly the sewer commissioner's rules and regulations, but we'd have to have a public hearing to change the actual rules and regulations.
And what would the time frame be on that if you decided to do it?
Posting would be the 2 weeks in the newspaper.
Okay. And then you'd have a public meeting just like this?
It'd actually be a public hearing. We'd have
Okay.
to post it and put it in the newspaper and make everybody aware that we
Okay.
were reviewing our rules and regulations with this being the piece of it.
All right. Okay. So I know you're probably concerned about opening the floodgates with this buyback program to set a precedent. If you do agree to it to add residential, but I think you know, I don't think the Legion's in that category. I know it's not a vacant parcel, but I don't think it's in the residential category. It's definitely, and it's not a defunct private social club. It's an nationally recognized entity. And, that's who we're trying to help out. And, over the years they've been there, they've donated and supported to lots of community activities and they still give scholarships. So, I don't know if hopefully if you are able to amend your bylaws that you could put some kind of caveat in there that this would, the amendment, not for residential, but for special circumstances, that they would meet special circumstances. They're not a nonprofit, they're just veterans. So, if going forward you do decide to amend your bylaws and add some language, I think, not so you open the floodgates, specifically for the Legion, it would be, you know, maybe a nonprofit or however you want to word it. And if you want, I can talk to you later about that, but that's my feeling. That they shouldn't be
Maybe-
categorized in the residential, you know, envelope.
Just, I think that's a reasonable comment. I mean, not that any comment's not reasonable, but it's a good comment that think this is such a new thing, you know, no one ever anticipated, like every regulation ever written, never anticipates 1,000 things that are gonna happen. So you
Mhm.
come up with something like this and you go, okay, how do we fix it and make it fair? I think that's our goal, come up with a fair way to do it, but not set a precedent such that we end up losing something in the process. And then now we have to start thinking about what if on other things. But I think what you just said, making this a special circumstance that the commission would have, make a determination on a very special circumstance, have a public meeting like we're having and talk about it. So we don't have to change the bylaws necessarily, but gives us that flexibility. Something like that, that might be a way to take the next step.
Yeah.
Either way, we gotta do changing the regs.
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, I mean, this is not a residential and this is a hardship basically for them because,
And
you
we
know.
have to be careful because this isn't on the agenda. I don't want to be the,
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I just want to make that statement.
okay, we'll let you know when we're gonna talk about it. How's
All
that?
right, all right,
Then we
yeah.
can have a good discussion on it.
All right, sounds great.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
All right, thank you, guys.
Yep. Okay, anything else, Dave?
No.
Okay,
Other than this.
yeah, so do you want to start off with this, or did I send something out to everybody last night,
Yeah, so I apologize. I've been kind of out of commission yesterday, so just trying to catch up on some stuff. So I just looking at all the moving parts. Um, You know, Kathleen and I had some discussions this morning. And I think from 1,000-foot perspective, we all have different numbers we're working with, and we all have to kind of figure out how we get to the same comfort level with all these different numbers.
Right.
You know, Kathleen's been discovering some information from town files, and you have plenty of information on your end. Jeannie and I have been going through some numbers, and I'm hoping by sharing our numbers here, we'll at least see that we're all in the same target area.
Mm-hmm.
With some specifics that we'll have to dial in and see how accurate they are. I put together some notes today and even though
Which one are we gonna start with, Dave?
Yeah.
So,
this is something I'm just working on downstairs, so
If it's operating or, debt,
so what I did is I looked at our revenue for FY 25.
yep,
Our revenue for users, our accepted revenue, and came up with a total revenue. So I'll just give you each
Okay.
one of these and can follow it along. And the alignment of these items, like I said, I'm just rushing to put it together downstairs, so it's not completely in alignment. So if you're looking at some of these numbers, they don't fall directly under the title given to them. But if you follow FY 25, I come up with revenue of 1.620240. And our accepted revenue estimated to be 400,000. Total revenue should be 2 million.
yeah, I get it, 2,020,000.
20,000, 20,000. Payroll 562, operating budget 947, town allocated cost 344,857. So the total budget without the plant debt and the leaching fields should give us 164,000 in the plus. We take our plant debt at 748,000. We have, what I have for numbers, 397,951 for betterments towards that debt, so we're short 350,528. We subtract out our surplus revenue of 164,709. I see a debt shortfall of about 185,819. And Kathleen did something that's similar. So our numbers are seem to be somewhat in line with each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, I think, overall, the operating budget, I think we're good with that to an extent. I mean,
Yes.
there may be a shortage, but I don't see one,
Right.
okay? I think going down the rabbit hole is debt. We know what our debt numbers are. We just don't know how much revenue we really have to pay that debt. We have been, that's why this past week or two, I've been, what charge codes make up which accounts? Because at the end of the day, we know we have X number of properties that have been sewered. And are they all being billed every year that should be? The ones that have not been paid off, are they all being billed? And then we know we have a firm number of what revenue to expect. And then you get into the retained earnings of $3 million and all this other stuff. So I know you wanted to talk about something to be on the agenda for tonight, so I don't know.
So my, really, what I asked to be on the agenda for tonight isn't specifically about, you know, where you stand in fiscal 25. Or where you anticipate standing in fiscal 26. My concern, I guess, is I guess my concern is there were conversations that occurred about additional betterment assessment on properties that had already been bettered. We talked, it's like the three of us, the assessor. I'm not sure who else was in the room, but at least four of us were in that room having a conversation with Jay, who indicated that, for example, the new leaching fields, you could better a property that has been better for the original project and included the original leaching field. But by a much smaller amount than bettering a property that's coming on to the sewer system that is being connected now, that has never received a betterment for the leaching fields.
Yeah, we have two ways to get revenue. One is a betterment. And like everybody's saying, you can't charge a betterment twice, but you can charge the connection fee. So that's,
So, again, I don't. The impression I've been given by Jay is you can't charge somebody a second time. So if somebody's already paid its connection fee to connect to the Kingston sewer department, can't charge us a connection fee.
okay.
Is what I'm being told by legal.
Well, and I'd like to be part of the conversation because Jay and I specifically put this language together. To allow that to happen.
I'll see him tomorrow.
I'd like, yeah, we
And
can,
we'll try to set something up.
that'd be
You just
great.
Let me know when you're available. And,
Yeah.
Again, we aren't trying to be antagonists or get in the middle of sewer department business. I'm just, from my point of view, I'm hearing, can't do it, but we may do it. And I'm just, before you get too far down the road, where I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and understands what can and can't be done. So a mistake isn't made and whatever adjustments have to be made to make sure that you guys collect the money you need to collect is being done properly. That's my issue.
So,
The reason I wanted to try to come tonight, just to make sure that the sewer commission and the county department and I are all on the same page moving forward, just so we all understand what we can and can't.
right, and I'm glad you're coming because this has never been a concern of Big Four. We've been doing it for years. And was there an alternative offered if in fact that turns out to be true? How are we gonna raise the revenue for this?
I think the only way you can raise rates.
Okay,
I mean,
I'll wait to talk with you then.
okay, I mean, I'm not sure what other way would you suggest?
We've been going under the whole purpose of that connection fee. I agree, betterments can't be charged twice. And I few months ago, this conversation was going on, and I did a follow-up email with everybody who was copied on it, and I never heard back that it wasn't valid. So that's why I just want to have the conversation with Jay,
Sure,
because that's how we create, that's the whole intent of creating this.
if you can let me know when you're available next week, I'll see Jay. See what days work for him.
Yeah, whatever works for you, I can make it work.
Again, I don't care. I'm just offering this
No.
up, so we all hear the same thing. Does it make any sense at all to have it be held in a sewer commission meeting? So the sewer commissioners hear what's going, hear what Jay's response is, so there's no, so everybody hears the same thing. Make
Yeah.
any sense to do
I mean,
that?
I think that makes sense, but I'm a little bit confused now. There was a discussion I thought was part of the problem was taxing separately somehow, and that's not on the table, right? We're not doing that at all. That's off the table, okay? So we're talking now about strictly the leaching field capital cost, the concept of a weighted betterment, something like that.
Yeah.
Where,
When you were on that call, Jay mentioned that he thought we could do some sort of betterment to an existing user for a share of the new leaching fees.
right,
But it was his opinion that we couldn't charge the same amount for betterment that we would charge somebody who's never been charged a betterment.
Right.
To be able to connect to the municipal sewer and ultimately that would connect to the new leaching fields. So.
Can you say that one?
Sure, so if I'm a long-term Kingston sewer user, and I've been charged a betterment to connect to the municipal sewer.
Okay.
Okay. Part of that betterment was the cost to construct the plant and construct the original leaching fields.
Right,
It was Jay's opinion that day that if me as a long-term user who already paid my share for the original leaching, he felt as though we could charge some sort of, I don't want to call it significant, but a reduced rate to the existing user. And I'm just gonna throw it numbers, $500 for somebody who's already paid a betterment for the original leaching field. Now, that would be different if a new user came on and had never paid a betterment for anything in the past. That the betterment assessment for the new leaching field would be a higher fee than
Thank you.
a higher fee than the person who's already paid a betterment on the existing.
okay, so the mechanism of charging an existing sewer customer a second amount of money, whatever we call it, is still viable. What's,
It is.
okay, so that I don't have a problem with. It sounds like the different conversation is how much to charge that existing sewer customer to someone who isn't already on the
Yeah.
system. Okay, so I'm good with that. We don't need to talk to Jay if that's the
Yeah.
situation.
He-
So,
I didn't think we were gonna be able to charge anybody. Existing customers.
No, he said I believe what he said was, that an existing customer would pay a reduced betterment for
The upgrade. to the
their
leaching
portion
field.
of a new leaching. It would not be, and again, he didn't come out and say it's gotta be 25%, it's gonna be 50%.
no, I
whatever that
understand.
is. But the impression I walked away from was the majority of whatever a betterment fee would be for a new customer. For the existing customer, it would be significantly less. And I don't know how to define significantly, so I'm sorry.
Prorated.
Prorated somehow.
And I can understand that thought process. The way any assessment is applied today, without this new information, the cost of the project divided by the
Yep,
users.
I understand.
So, that, either we can have a public meeting with Jay on so we can all be on the same page, because it doesn't sound like that. And then
Clarity.
take it from there.
There's a lot of different terms being used. for the
Right.
Same things.
Yeah,
And
so,
there's differences of opinion, because what you just said means you're gonna take the entire leaching field expense and put this through to the.
No, I think-
Well,
I think we're talking about, I
Which
think
is
this,
a-
this
I said
discussion,
it's a
we're taking,
considerable amount of money.
there's 2,000 people on it now, and there's another
It's-
1,000 that might come on it. You'd weight it in such a way that, again, using numbers, it'd be a $50 betterment on the users already paid into the betterment, and it'd be a $500 on the others, something like that. When I left the meeting, that was definitely put out there as an idea. I left the meeting also, in my mind, what we talked about is that there would be no additional charge to the users. That's part of what I'm trying to figure out. How do we reconcile that?
so the last sentence you just.
The
Last sentence you just said. confused.
There would be no charge, that there was a previous commitment to the users that there would be no additional charge. Now we're coming up with a legitimate way to deal with that in the town meeting.
Every town meeting that we pitched it.
the last town meeting, I said that the existing customers would probably be paying for the leaching
Right.
field.
But there was a commitment before that, all that happened. You're right. So there's a commitment in their minds that there wouldn't be. Now there's an adjustment we made to compensate for that. The discussion we have, I think, has to come back with, do we really need that or not?
Well, it depends. So from my point of view, maybe, you've got so many units. I don't know what the right term
Close
is,
to 2,000.
that you can sell
Oh, yeah.
or provide wastewater for,
When there's water, potable water.
Oh, yeah.
Expand.
right? So it's up to the sewer commission, I think, to determine if there's 2,000 units and it costs $2 million. I'm just using numbers that are simple to calculate, right? What is that, $1,000 a unit
Something like that.
to get the $2 million? Then you then have, over the time of the bond, you've repaid that $2 million cost for the leaching field by charging those customers that per unit cost. If there's an ability to charge existing users a smaller fee, then you've got to figure out, okay, how many units have I already sold? How many units do I have available for new customers? And do a calculation that accounts for recouping the total cost of the leaching field.
In
Sure.
theory, that's already been done. Had we had the fourth tank, had we had customers for the fourth tank, they would be charged more money than the existing betterments,
Mhm.
which would have covered a very big portion
Sure.
of the leaching fields. And any difference, if there were any, would probably be recouped by the existing customers. But we were going down that path. It all changed. So this is why we're trying to get a handle on how much revenue do we really have? How much revenue is available to us to possibly bridge a gap between us and getting the fourth tank sold? So that's why we see $3 million in retained earnings and well, we can get into the spreadsheets because it says retained earnings. But either way, there's more than $1 million in retained earnings.
Mhm.
Okay? So we have what we as non-financial people would look at as excess funds that we can't tap, we can tap. But this is why what's our revenue? When we get that number, then we can, as a board, start to make some decisions.
To the point that revenue, Kevin and I had a nice discussion the other day. The one number that sticks out to me is, and it's retained earnings, but it's not retained earnings, it's assigned to a betterment over a schedule that was a very important point.
Mhm.
This was retained earnings from the mall connection that has no note open to it. And so it looks like to us, we have around 1.6 or something like that million. Which is not,
Unapportioned.
it's not unapportioned, or whatever the right,
Yeah,
I can talk about chemistry and stuff, but
yeah.
anyways, so unapportioned, so can that be used in the short term to offset some of our shortfall, particularly in the next 2 years? And this gets back to my committee, which this number, so I can't go to a committee without, what are we trying to do? Oh, I don't really know yet. So there's that piece, and then buying time for other capital revenue coming in a couple of years. But that's a really important, to me, that's a really important decision point,
Mhm.
is whatever retained earnings, cash on hand, whatever it's called, is not earmarked for something else that we can then take and solve some of this immediate problem. Because I'm of the opinion that we should be using betterments for capital cost reimbursement, and O&M should be used as fees only. You're not mixing them, but we've done that a little bit, but that if we have to do, we have to do it. But that just gets us down gets us down the road, which is not good for an enterprise account.
So a couple of things. This is the first I'm hearing about these numbers, so I can't really speak to them, but what I've heard is two numbers, 1.6-ish, which is a fund for unreserved fund balance or retained earnings.
It's actually in the betterment fund. They prepaid, the mall prepaid betterments. So it's put in the betterment fund and it is, so it's termed unapportioned.
Okay.
So they paid, like, if you look at the
So can I? So I get it.
debt
So-
service schedule, it's for
They paid in advance.
future years.
All right,
Yeah,
right.
so it's future
So-
year money that will get allocated on a yearly basis based on their predetermined.
Okay, so
amortization
that's
schedule.
1.6, if that's the number, but the mall is prepaid,
Mhm.
it's reserved.
It's reserved.
So, and then the $3 million that Elaine mentioned is.
I made a mistake.
I don't
It's
know.
not retained earnings, it's reserved for betterment. It says reserved for betterment, 3,181,000.
So that's
495.
unapportioned betterments. That's
What?
future money
Okay,
That's
for
money
the next 20 years of
Right.
debt service.
so that's my question. That's one of my big questions. Okay, let's guess 1.6 million of that is the prepayment of the apartments. If not, what makes up 3.1 million of us having that much collection ahead of time?
What it is it's to be billed.
Right. but
They
it's-
haven't even paid that. That's not money necessarily. There's future, it's a
It's debt.
liability.
Okay, it's debt, it's not money.
It's
then.
not a debt. It's liability that all the homeowners have to pay. They're on the hook for the next whatever terms that they have.
Anticipated
20
revenue.
years. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So they owe this. It's like a mortgage.
Okay, so it's
like,
not
well, that
money-
is.
It's not
It's not
cash
money
on
in the
hand.
bank.
So is
It's
it a?
not money in the bank.
Okay.
Is it a?
What it
Thank
is, it's money to be paid to the town
Over the life.
over the life of their betterment. So what it is, it's, some people are prepaid, so there is like some cash on hand. And so the mall prepaid.
Right,
But it's not money you can get. It's
not money
put in the
available.
bucket for
Okay.
each year.
okay.
So whether it's in the bank or to be paid, they are allocated for each year. And you can't mix the two together. It's apples and oranges. And it's, even if if everybody prepaid, it's allocated for each year.
Right, so the money would
So
be
you
there
can't
when the debt payment
take-
comes due.
You can't take FY30's money and use it next year.
But the money has been, it's in retained earnings, but it's been reserved for a specific purpose. In this case, it's reserved for annual debt payments. That.
For future debt service.
That the betterments have been paid into.
Yeah.
So let me drill down a little bit. My understanding was when we talked, I misunderstood.
No change.
Much of that was, as you said, anticipated revenue. In the case of the mall, they paid it all up front,
Mhm.
and there was no note associated with it. There was no SRF loan associated with it. My understanding is,
Mhm.
so the deal there was separate from the entire SRF process. They gave us betterments based on our rules and regulations of $22,000 per ERU, which came up to 3.2 million. Half of that was spent for engineering design, paid off, and construction, which was paid off. And in the bank, is 1.6 million. That's not part of this revenue going forward. It should be allocated as a in the bank for the sewer commission. If that's true, then we should have 1.6 million to draw on for the capital costs of the leaching field specifically, because the other money's already allocated for the rest of the expansion and all those other things.
Was there an agreement? Is there some kind of documentation that you had with them that would outline?
That's why I have to go to
That
Melina.
says that they paid the betterment in
What
full.
it's for and what it's to be used for.
They paid their betterment in full.
So then their betterment is like,
Give it to
it's
us.
just like Mary Smith down the street who pays her betterment in full.
No, but
It's
that
money
was,
in the CAD, it's money in the bank. to
see, I think
be
the
used for
difference
debt
is
service.
those monies were allocated looking forward from back 20 years ago.
So it was a reduction in the amount of debt you incurred,
Yeah, so,
right?
so we had,
They
we
split
had, so look at all these mass water pollution abatement trusts, but there are all these millions of them that there are in there. Those are what I think we're talking about on earnings anticipated to pay those notes coming from betterments that are $200, $500 a year from whoever of these 600 people who are left to pay off and the Nook and Adina and whatever. Then we have this new cash that came in within the last 4 years or 5 years
Yeah.
that specifically was for, there was no note. I mean, they made it a short-term note. It came in, here you go, 3.2 million, pays for the construction, pays for the engineering design, that's all paid. And left is the betterment fee that the sewer commission has to use. So I'll use the word unrestricted.
Unrestricted?
Unrestricted, I'm putting that on the table because I think it's unrestricted, because there is no forward-looking note to pay off, because it wasn't ever a note.
So if I understand what you're saying. I'm just gonna pull out numbers, right?
Yeah.
The cost of the engineering construction of the leaching fields is $3 million. Or whatever the number, I don't know what again, I'm just fabricating numbers. The plant
No,
upgrade
yep.
was $3 million, okay? Just let me just, I don't know,
Okay. Not
I'm just
Plain upgrade? No,
Plain
not what we're
upgrade.
talking.
playing up, so the money that was given by the apartment complex at the mall was $3 million,
3.2.
$3.2 million. A portion of that 3.2, or all of it, I'm not sure which, was used to fund the engineering work that was done
But
and to pay for
The short-term ban.
a portion of the construction cost.
all of
So-
the construction costs for the sewer connection from the mall to hook up to our existing sewer. That included a pump station, right?
Right, so the project, for argument's sake, the project cost was $5 million, right? And just for argument's sake,
Yep.
I'm trying to keep it straight.
Yep. Yeah, no, no kidding.
A certain amount of money, from the apartments was funded, was given to the sewer department, so they wouldn't have to be part of it. So the amount of money that was borrowed was the total cost of the project, less the amount of money given by the mall to use for this project. So the net of that was whatever the number was, and it kept them, and the mall had already paid.
Right.
Right?
It's for the sewer commission's use for capital cost reimbursement,
Right.
whatever.
You did not borrow
Nope.
any of the costs associated with connecting the mall apartments
Right.
to the.
So just to maybe clarify a little bit. So instead of what would typically happen, there would be a loan from SRF or some other loan, whatever, some other loan.
Mhm.
And we borrow on that and take the money and pay it off like we have with all the other benefits. But in this particular case, what we did is they gave the whole thing. So no note, no payment, no nothing for us to use for the purposes of again, I keep capital and operation maintenance completely separate. That betterment is 100% for capital cost reimbursement. So in this situation, we have that money now and we can offset, I think, any capital cost shortfall we have here, rather than stealing from our O&M side, we can put it towards this right now.
Well, I guess what I'm confused with is if the apartments gave you $3 million and you use that money to pay down some of the construction costs of the project. So you only had to borrow the total project cost less than $3 million given by the apartment complex. The apartment complex has paid their fair share of the upgrade of the plant that is normally paid for through a betterment assessment, but it was paid for upfront in cash. So wouldn't you, I guess where I'm confused.
I know you're on.
Is I shouldn't
I think I know.
I shouldn't have a pot of money left from the apartment complex because I used the money they gave me to fund
Okay.
their portion, if you want to call it that, of the project. So that's where I guess where I get losing.
Okay,
They paid the three.
so here's the two pieces. There's, think of it as that's the sewer's already in the ground, all that stuff's in the ground. The betterment costs for those are to be borne by anyone who accept any time later, okay? So their cost for the sewer connection, just from our closest point to their system, they paid for it, okay? And the betterment, the balance that's left is for us to use to pay off the capital costs that they should have been on for the treatment plant and everything else, just like everybody else did.
So like a betterment.
So.
Yeah, but it's not this.
Hang on. let me-
Well,
so-
it's
but hang on, hang on.
proportional.
So they gave me $3 million. Just round numbers, right?
Mhm.
For their share. A portion of the $3 million was to fund the connection from the plant to the apartment complex at the mall. The remaining amounts after the cost for that connection was for plant upgrade.
Pay to ban.
No.
No.
Well, it's for any, it would have been for anything capital cost related to the sewer commission wanted to pay off.
So
Anything.
it's,
So they
it's
gave me
money not
1.6
for,
so they gave me
that?
$1.6 million more. than
Based on our
than-
betterment
than they-
fees for the amount of flow that they had gotten from us in our rules and regulations, they paid $22,000 per ERU, okay? And that was the entire reason for that was to collect money enough to pay for anything we had for capital costs. And and I'm separating out, everybody else was done kind of on a long-term 30-year mortgage kind of place, okay? This was a unique thing for us to be able to get that money, it's paying it off. I mean, we're gonna use it, but we're gonna use it on the short-term debt payment. Legitimately, it's a debt payment on the notes that are outstanding, which is, getting back to your point, the debt that's still left out there for the leaching field or the expansion or anything else that's not paid for. Everything else should be already accounted for. That's the good news is phase 1 and phase 2 are already taken care of. We've already got those taken care of. So this is, to me, I think to us, is money we can use. It's unrestricted funds.
There was no debt out there
no, that's
currently.
not accurate.
There's no debt, there's no debt out there that needs to have some of this $1.6 million that's left from the mall apartments.
For the connection itself. Just the connection is paid for 100%. So the balance of what's left is to pay off capital costs of the entire plant and everything that's in the ground that everyone else is paying off. But it's not restricted to any particular note. It was given to us. And this is the whole way it's set up. That's why keeping O&M costs separate from capital. So we're not mixing. We're paying off O&M. If we use an O&M to pay off capital, that's wrong too. That means we have users over here, whoever they are, paying for something that they already paid for out of their user fee instead of going to this guy to run the plant.
I don't want, yeah.
No, right. That's the
Okay,
philosophical
can
side.
can I just clarify? So they gave you $1.6 million
They give us-
above and beyond what they would have incurred if they actually got a betterment.
No, they gave exactly what they should have gotten for the betterment. Exactly.
So
what
they paid $3.2 million.
Yes,
Is their betterment for whatever period of time that was calculated based on their usage, the 20,000. So that's how they paid it is irrelevant to the process. It is not to be used for other things. Those funds are built in to how much money is in the betterment.
this
fund.
is again the point. They were not given to us assigned to a loan on a schedule to pay off for 20 years or 30, whatever it was. It was given to us to pay capital costs as we need it.
But it went in a betterment.
Well, I mean,
It's in the
that, then
betterment
this
fund
gets,
now, and it's
the-
part of.
so it's a
capital
betterment
So I
fund, but
guess
it's
the
not,
question
it's
now
not
is,
when
should
it's,
it be?
So I get it. So I guess where I'm still confused, where I'm not understanding, I'm still the slow guy in the room, so I
Yeah.
apologize.
I'm right there with you.
The apartment complex was assessed a betterment of $3.2 million.
based on their,
Based on.
their flow and,
They-
well, excuse me, just a minute. And they also paid advance, didn't they pay some advance? Yeah, they bought some advance numbers too. They bought some advance, paid us in advance, just like Big Wide Mall, they paid us more money because they wanted to be able to expand without us having,
So.
same kind of thing though.
Okay, so they wrote a check to the Kingston Water Sewer Department, excuse me, for $3.2 million for their share of sewage going into the plant. And
Their share of the
expand-
capital cost of this, of the sewage treatment plant and its
Well,
collection
it
system.
was all capital, wasn't
That was up, I mean, capital not mean money capital, capital meaning
it?
infrastructure,
Capital project.
infrastructure, yeah.
Understood. So they contributed, it was calculated that based on their usage, their betterment for their usage was $3.2 million.
Right.
The mall developer, I'm sorry, the apartment developers decided, I think, we'd rather not get a betterment for 20 or 30 years. We'd rather just give you the $3.2 million in a check up front right now, right? So I guess where I'm falling off, understanding what's going on is they prepaid for $3.2 million worth of usage. And
Actually,
Not-
not used as capital cost.
They paid for a connection fee.
I understand it, but based on it's, they paid. And I'm sorry if I'm.
No, I'm telling you, I'm, as I look around the room,
They paid.
I'm alone here and I'm looking at everybody.
No, I appreciate that. They paid
I think I'm.
You're
you were
not
hearing it,
alone.
right?
You're
You're
not
hearing it,
alone.
okay?
They paid $3.2 million, which was what they would have been better over the length of the bond,
Exactly.
right?
That's it.
And just not
Because-
to muddy the water, but in lieu of borrowing, $1.6 million paid for expenses that were incurred in, in the whole project,
The construction.
in the construction.
Yeah.
So in lieu of that money going to pay off debt service, it went directly to pay back the expense. So there really is that, it kind of paid off its own debt. It's kind of an own debt. It's.
They paid off a debt that it wasn't, they paid off a debt that,
The amount borrowed, $1.6 million less than what would have needed to be borrowed if the apartment complex had not prepaid.
there was no borrowing.
Well, it was
understand
an
what I'm saying, though. What I'm
expense
saying
that was
is if they
incurred
didn't-
and they paid it back.
If they had borrowed
Rather
money,
than borrowing
if the
money. to
apartment
pay it
if they
back.
had borrowed money.
If the
mall
department said, we're gonna pay a betterment over 20 years, whatever the length of the thing is.
That's how it's
The
been
sewer,
accounted for.
the sewer department would have had to borrow
So,
an additional amount, that loan would increase by whatever the betterment was for the mall.
Right.
Fair enough?
Right.
So when you say that the betterment money that was collected from the apartment complex is not tied to a bond.
Yeah.
I understand what you're telling me, but I still think, I guess where I'm still thinking that the 3.2 that was collected.
How
I
about,
think I
what
understand.
question,
I don't understand why it wasn't spent. I mean, that's where
That's,
that's where I'm confused, right?
that's, let's stop right there
Thank
then.
you.
That's a good point. So you gotta think of this as a cash payment.
Understood.
Okay,
Yep,
it's a
absolutely.
cash payment.
I
Trying to
get
get put it in the terms that
How-
I understand. So now, so I paid off, and my cash payment was for two things. I have to hook up, the sewer commission is not gonna pay to hook you up.
Mhm.
So you would have paid a betterment, we'll borrow $2 million, let's say, to put the pipe in a pump station and hook you up. and then you pay us off for that. But instead of a note that is involved with that, here's the cash, boom, done. So here's the other money that's left, was their payment of the betterment, which was structured 25 years ago to accomplish all the capital costs. Now, when we did the system, originally set it up, we had, what Kathleen's, explained, is that all these betterments would put out on 20 or 30-year notes, and we were collecting them, and all that money going to that betterment, that particular kind of payment from all these individuals is going into a bank account that's structured to pay off those debts. So don't touch it. I agree. This money was put in for us to spend as needed to pay off any short-term capital costs that we deem necessary. And furthermore, we would we've already started to adjust our betterments going forward. For anybody else who hooks up,
See where I'm falling off the turnip truck, and I apologize.
One more and then I'm gonna,
Yeah, that's fine. I appreciate it. So $3.2 million is what they gave, right? And that was what was determined to be their share of costs to connect to the Kingston sewer line. So
connect and pay for
the
the
better,
betterment that was paid, the money we spent on phase one, the expansion.
understood. So there's a check for $3.2 million.
Right.
Using your example, I know that it's not exact, but I'm just using an example. You said that there was a cost to run, if I understood correctly, cost to run the connection from the plant.
Not from plant, from a manhole in the
From
street,
a manhole to your apartments, $2 million, right?
something like that.
Okay. So what that means to me is there's $1.2 million in costs associated with either the connection hang on, we just finished, connection of the apartments, or so let me back up, let me ask it a different way. So I've got a balance of $1.2 million left, 3.2 less than $2 million.
Mhm.
That $1.2 million was a cost assigned to the hotel for something, not the hotel, apartments or something, right?
Yeah.
But what was it, what was that?
okay, we're
Oh,
not gonna get to the other side of this here.
Yeah,
We're
but
not.
this is important. I mean, I think I've said it, but all the other costs that are out there for the treatment plant, the construction, the expansion, and all the sewers in Route 3A and all that are still capital costs being paid for by the sewer commission, with the sewer commission's oversight. That money is for that. The betterment cost wasn't just for a particular thing. It's for the entire system. So those $22,000 was part
Okay,
per ERU. That's why it's per ERU. So if you have a single family home, you paid 1 ERU. If you're the VFW we had, they paid 5. The mall paid, they're all different. So it all depended on the flow.
So the apartment complex wasn't just, they weren't charged $3.2 million just for the plant upgrade and their connection.
Just their connection they paid for. That was
Well,
solely
and
100%.
anything else.
But all the rest of the money was for
Okay.
all the other things.
Okay, I gotta, what we know is, right now, the 1.6 is being considered a betterment that is being paid throughout the year.
Mhm.
What would make, from an accounting perspective, that change to be cash in the bank, like Brian
Some
said?
kind of document that says it's not a betterment. It
Okay.
shouldn't be in that fund.
Okay,
There had to be some agreement that got
Okay.
signed with them all.
so. well,
They don't just give
Well,
large
I-
checks like that.
All right,
because you're nice.
so that's
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
that's,
But even if it, just to
Okay.
be clear, that 1.6 million, so rather than incurring debt and taking that money to pay the debt back via betterment mechanism, the 1.6 million that was not allocated towards anything at the time is because there wasn't a corresponding expense, I don't think, to actually attribute it to. So it was set
okay.
aside for future, and then as those expenses were incurred, the town then went out and borrowed money, which that money is now going to pay back.
using the 1.6.
using the $1.6 million.
So that was,
So
it.
whether or not you call it a betterment, an agreement, an off-book thing, a contribution, or like a, you know, a nice retirement plan, that money is to pay for debt service incurred to create, to expand the plant. And that's, and then the leaching field is a whole other thing. But so regardless of how you do it, those funds have to be allocated for that debt service.
I
If
think
you
that's
pull
wrong.
it forward,
I-
you will have deficits in the future.
So there's, so that, I
That's all
guess,
there is.
Okay, let's
Can I
hear
ask-
from Dave.
Can I ask like a dumbed down question? If we look at our plant's expansion debt in either of these spreadsheets,
Mhm.
so for 25, FY 25, we're at 745,717.
Mhm.
And we have a yearly revenue towards that debt of 397,951.
Yep.
Does that 397,951 include the monies? The 1.6 from the.
I'd have to double check, like
So
how this was all
That,
allocated,
that
Yeah.
might set an idea on how.
but then
it
you're
was all
still, you're
set.
still short.
But, okay,
That's the problem.
We're still short, so
You're
then to
still
use that
short.
1.6.
No, that 1.6 is
Uh,
in
okay.
the whole bucket of money.
let's say let's say
That's all
had
there
the
is.
apartment not paid us in full. Let's say the yearly debt would be 50,000.
Mhm.
So the question, to Dave's point, is that 50,000 in here
Is
to be
it,
paid?
is it in that revenue stream or is it outside that?
And
That I'd have
that's-
to double check. And
Yeah.
to be honest, like, you know, and to be fair, and I'm not throwing her under the bus, this is all the stuff that Carol put together. And this is all the money that is in
Yes.
every single fund that is used to pay for capital costs, whether they're debt or they're actually incurred in reimbursements. That's all the money there is, and there is not enough to cover the future debt that is incurred because there's a shortfall. If I look at the way the funds were allocated, and this is what Brian and I talked about, and not to go too in a rabbit hole, is I wanted to see what the source of all of this funding was. There was an arrangement to determine X number of people have to pay X number of dollars, and those funds are for this particular borrowing or something along those lines. How did it start? How is the schedule mapped out? Because you can't do like, I'm gonna charge $50,000, but I'm gonna have $100,000 in expense. You're gonna have a deficit, which has to be made up somewhere.
And
So there had to be a map of where this started. And no one has the map.
right, and that's why, again, like I said at the beginning of all this, we gotta get back to the charge codes because
The charge codes don't really have anything to do with it. The charge codes are certain allocation of things for certain parcel IDs, and that is all charged out. How that came to be is what's missing.
agreed, but to see what our shortfall really is, we need to determine if every property is being.
They
billed.
are being billed.
Can we validate that?
You don't have a source document to verify it again. You'd show me the list of where it started.
isn't that what?
These
isn't that
50
what-
We wouldn't
people-
have
That's
that.
exactly what we're trying to do.
Somebody has
Exactly what we're
to.
doing.
It wouldn't be, we would provide a document of parcels to bill. The
Okay.
money amount and how it was allocated, was every property allocated? We
I
don't
can
know.
check that. I need a list
Isn't
Okay, that's,
of the
that's, this,
50 people.
Aaron, isn't Aaron doing?
this is what Aaron is
Charge.
trying to do. Exactly right.
That's it.
That's what we're trying to get our hands around, and none of us were here to
Well, then
create the
somebody-
list.
Somebody has to have a list.
In on the reverse of that, someone
But you-
should have record of receiving the list. We're both in the same
is that?
situation.
So at the end of,
We're both in the
so
same
at the end of the day,
situation.
I have a whole list.
Can I just?
I don't know if it's
stop you
right.
there?
Neither
have
do
it.
we.
I think. so
Well, then
let
we
me-
have a problem.
Okay,
let me
how about
just-
you give us out your list and we'll validate it.
So what we got,
Against what?
can I interrupt real quick?
Properties we know should be sewered.
So
Okay.
That's what she's
at
talking
this
about.
point, I believe the sewer commission is working with Aaron Benoit to try to do just what is being proposed.
Exactly.
So, that information should be known sometime and hopefully in the near future.
Right, so I don't know, if Jean had a chance to talk to her this week, but I talked to her last week. She really got the thing together again. Matt has been able to help her with some GIS documents. it seemed to be coming together really fast, but the idea, exactly what you're saying, is to know exactly what lots have been paid or not paid and where they are, so we can start to reconcile this whole thing and know how many didn't get on that were cut off because we ran out of capacity in 2003. All those numbers are coming together. But
So we'll have that number. So my impression was that things were going along as anticipated. The challenge, I guess, with the shortfall starts to come into play is the expansion of the sewer plant, where the expectation was we would have water to sell, so you'd have new connections for sewer, and the new connections for the sewer would be paying a betterment that would offset, ultimately, once it's all sold out, would offset the cost of the bonds. The problem, I think, that's happened is, as we all painfully know, I've got no water to sell, which means I can't connect the sewer connection, which means the bond payment for the treatment plant upgrade is not being supported by or offset by the appropriate amount of betterments. And because of that, you've got to find another revenue source to offset whatever's not being picked up by users who being charged the betterment for the treatment plant. I think that's what so
Yeah.
we can go back 30 years ago, but I'm not sure that's the real issue. We maybe
No,
have a
that's
few
why-
accounts here and there. It seems like to me anyways, we borrowed X number of dollars for the sewer plant with the expectation we were gonna have X number of people to pay a betterment to offset the cost of the annual debt payment.
And we did have those customers.
We did.
We did.
I'm not disputing.
No, I just need to say that publicly.
Sure, so.
We had those
And
customers.
when the sewer plant, at some point, when the sewer plant was finished up and ready to accept new users' septage, those new users weren't there by and large because there was no water to flush the toilet with. So there's a bond payment that's due on an annual basis by the sewer department for the funding of the the treatment plant expansion. And there aren't the corresponding users paying whatever they have to pay in a betterment fee, pay the bond up. So the sewer department is a gap between annual bond payment for a treatment plant and betterments we're receiving from treatment plant. And that,
And I'm suggesting that this money that was allocated before any of us were in this situation was allocated in a way that it was not meant to pay off a note going out in time necessarily. In that fashion, instead we have cash in the bank that we can use, particularly in the short term, to do exactly what it was intended to do, pay off the capital cost of any outstanding capital monies that the sewer commission needs to pay.
where I still am not fully understanding the situation is apartment complex 5 or 6 years ago says to the sewer commission, we don't want a betterment. We're gonna write you a check for $3.2 million.
No, it's based on a betterment.
I understand that. We don't want a betterment, right? We understand there's a betterment of 3.2 million. Rather than having a
Long-term
payment,
debt.
long-term debt, where I'm gonna give you a betterment for the next 20 or 30 years. Me, apartment complex, let's just give you the $3.2 million and done with it.
Right.
Fair? Now, it sounds like there was $2 million expended of the money that came from the apartment complex.
Mhm.
For,
1.6 to pay a BN, which is a short-term loan.
sure.
Mhm.
uh,
For
leaving-
the cost and the expansion, at
Right,
that point in
right,
time, yeah.
right.
Yep.
The
So
sewer
there's
connection,
one-
not expansion, the sewer connection,
Well, part of
For the sewer project.
the project.
their sewer project. I just, their,
Okay, so,
1.6 was for their part of the cost of their sewer only. The rest of it was for the rest of the sewer. All the rest of the sewage treatment plant.
I think we gotta find out, this was 5 or 6 years ago, find out what document was signed,
I just don't.
and then we go from there.
I just don't know why the mall would give you all that money. if
Right,
it
why would
wasn't
the
for
mall-
their
Because they owe
benefit.
it to us. You know,
But then
this
that's
is,
what
this
it's
is,
for.
this is-
Okay,
no,
We're not
no.
gonna solve this here. We're not gonna solve
From
it
a
here.
1,000-foot point, we'll look
Right.
at this as an issue
Yeah.
to deal with.
Right,
Yeah,
And
If we can
going
find it.
forward, it will help us address maybe how long we can work through the short-term issue of our debt is. So if we look 5 years out, when the water system comes on board, things are gonna somewhat fix themselves, but the
In a
short-term
perfect
run,
world.
that we have to look at our options.
But if you use future money with the thought
So the
process
issue,
of,
the issue at this
you're
point.
getting
the
these
issue-
customers
so
and you
the issue-
don't,
Right.
you're back at the.
Oh, I get it, I
So the
get it,
issue at this
but,
I don't
point,
wanna take.
but,
so we better determine, if I could,
I'll-
what that
I'll
$1.6
look at
million
that.
that's remaining
Right.
from the mall, the apartments at the mall, what the purpose of that 1.6 was. Because I would tend to agree with Kathleen. I don't know why I guess where I'm confused and still don't understand, why would the mall give you a $3.2 million check if we're gonna use half?
It was 5 or 6 years ago. Let's go back and,
Understood?
I know, but we're,
I get it.
yeah, we're circling
as
the
they
wagons.
say,
I'll
there's
draw
no
this
new
up. I'm gonna draw
information.
this up.
I get it. I think it's.
So my point, and I agree, I don't like to spend money that's set aside for something else, because then when you need that, it's not there.
Mhm.
But, you know, we look at it and see, how was that document set up? How was it funded? Is that 397 a portion of that 1.6?
I
And
will
without,
go and, I don't wanna make any assumptions.
without
because I've
knowing
never
what
worked there.
Carol did at the
Yeah,
time.
Right,
but
and
if
that's-
that money is in there, then it's not like it's extra. I just want,
Or
I
acceptable
will
for
figure out
company.
which fund that money went into. But when I kind of traced it out, because I looked at it, I was like, what the heck is this money? It didn't make any sense and it like took forever to figure it out. And I was like, why did this go here and there? And so based on what I saw was rather than us like holding on to the money to pay it incrementally, there wasn't an incremental expense. It was all an upfront expense. And so it was just done ahead. It was more like, it's almost like there should be like a big wall, like what was done with the money when
I
it was
agree.
received.
Yeah.
Really shouldn't be part of the discussion. You know, because it gets, it's kind of doing apples and oranges and, you know, it is.
Let us try to reach back.
We just want to figure out what it is. And my biggest issue is if that $1.6 million is in there and you still have that shortfall, how are you gonna pay for the shortfall?
And this is where we're trying to get around the other side of the revenue. We have a list of every property that is sewered. We now need to know if they're being billed. That's our
So was
quantum
that
right now.
ever, was there ever in the years, in the, I don't know, like 15 plus years, 20 years almost that all this has been going on? Has there ever been an audit
There was about 10 years
10
ago.
years ago? Do you
But-
have those documents?
I will see if we can find them,
But
but it comes down to,
Having this, an audit now.
things have fallen on and off. We've seen it within the past couple of years that parcels haven't been billed, and that's my concern.
Well, who did you bring that concern up to?
They weren't shown on bills.
Can I just-
Okay, well, I guess my concern
Hang
is
on.
when those things came to light, what was done to remedy them so we can make.
They just came
sure-
to light now within the past few,
Do we have a list
No.
of, so Elaine, you had mentioned that there was.
every property that should,
Should be billed.
that is on sewer that should be billed.
So if we can get a copy of that list, I think we very easily can determine whether or not each one of those properties was issued a betterment.
Being resourceful of your resource, give us what you have and we'll do the
Do
vetting.
you have munis access for the town?
That's the-
I do
so
not,
can-
but
so
staff does.
We should be able, so I'd like,
Our staff.
so
Jeannie.
Kathleen, let's do this.
Okay.
Let's see if we can.
Well, I'm not trying to add more
I
work
understand, I
to
appreciate that. So let's
I know.
do this. We'll talk to the assessment department because they handle all the betterment stuff. And let's see if the assessment department has the capability of providing a list of all the betterments, all the sewer betterments, all the properties that are receiving sewer betterments, and then we can give that list to you.
That would be great.
There are
And-
reports that can generate, I mean,
And that's where the
Probably like-
charge codes come into play.
right, it's hundreds and hundreds of pages.
That's fine. So we'll just, let us get you what we can provide.
That would be
You
great.
guys can then look at that and
Right,
say,
yeah,
this
you can look
is
at
all the
that list.
information we need to do the double checking,
Right,
or it's not, can you get this?
but you'd have to go through.
We'll
and
try to
find
get
out.
we'll try to get a property map and lot number, because the owners.
Yeah, we've got that.
We will try to get, the owner name obviously for now, but again, maybe an issue. We will try to get, a betterment code, if that's the right term to use,
Yeah,
right?
Yep,
So you know which betterment code that particular property is being assigned to. And, you know, if we can, I don't know, if we can, what the last betterment bill amount was.
You know, even the bill file, the preliminary bill file and the actual bill file.
Gina's a comment.
Well, let us try to get.
Wrap up, yeah.
We gotta-
Well,
The bill
those are,
files.
okay, I mean, you guys,
Let us try to get what we can and we'll give it to you and we can go.
yeah,
Let us try to get
yeah.
that.
All right,
All right,
good.
thank you for all your conversation, appreciate it. We're all on the same team.
There will be more conversation.
There will, and we're all, you know, we're all trying to do the same. thing.
Exactly, we're trying to, I'll just get.
Thank you.
started.
We'll figure it out.
Thing.
Thank you all.
Okay, I guess we have to, anything, you know what? I'll put it back in. Anything critical to talk about, got somebody coming in
You want,
behind us.
you want to meet next week at all? Or do you need?
You want to meet next week?
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Okay, Tuesday, 4:30,
Make a motion to adjourn.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.